Hello and welcome to a tutorial on the usage of solid stock within MasterCAM. Solid stock is very useful when your geometry is coming from like a weldment or possibly a casting, something that's non-standard and is not simply a round bar or a square rectangular piece of square stock. There are a couple important setup notes that I want to talk about first before we get into the MasterCAM portion. Anytime that you want to create a Solidworks or even Inventor or any kind of solid stock model for use in MasterCAM, what you want to do is make sure that all your geometry is merged. If you don't have these properly merged when you save the file, what happens is MasterCAM only allows you to pick one solid. You won't be able to pick the entire piece. What I mean by having a merged solid, specifically in SolidWorks, is that merge result is checked on for all these separate extrusions here. They're not their own separate entities when they come into MasterCAM. This part here is, I call it a welded bracket. All right. I have some prints here that I want to just show you just so you get some understanding as to how we're going to set this up. This is the finished machining bracket. You'll notice that we have some surface finish marks on the bottom side of the part and on the two landings here on the central stand. And these are the areas that we're going to be machining off of. So the rest of these areas is going to be left as welded. And these two pads in this bottom surface must be machined. And that's to achieve squareness. You know, when you weld this central bracket, the heat generated from the welding is going to warp certain areas of the part. So by facing the bottom area in these two pads, we ensure perpendicularity between the two. The other print that I have here is the as welded print. So this represents the stock sizes used by the welder when they are trading the weldment. And the one area that I really want to point out to you right here is the half-inch base plate that's going to be provided as stock versus the 3/8 machine thickness afterwards. So this bottom of this half, or the bottom of this base, is going to be machined, going to have an 1/8 of an inch machined off of it. And we're going to have to remember that later on for when we're bringing our solid stock model into MasterCAM. So with all that being said, I have done a little bit of prep work here. If you don't understand some of these concepts, you may want to go and check the other videos. What I have done so far is I have come in and I've loaded the main as machined piece, and I had to rotate it into the correct position. And I drew some reference geometry here, because what we want to do is we want to have our plane on the sharp corner of this radius. There's no real way to touch off on the, on the sharp corner of this radius here. What we'll be doing is we'll be hitting the two sides here with a probe and zeroing out on the sharp corner. So I had to draw that in manually. After I drew those two lines and trimmed them, I duplicated the top plane and moved the Op10 G54 plane that I created to that area there. So this is going to be our top of stock here, our level 0 for now. What we're going to do next is actually bring in that stock model that I showed you just recently and show you how to position it, and we'll go from there. So since I already have this file started and I have the main piece already located in the drawing space, the way I'm going to bring in the stock model is by merging. Okay, when you're adding things to an existing file, you're always going to be merging them. So I'm going to go into merge, and I have to navigate to find the SolidWorks part that I want to bring in to turn into my stock. Of note, remember that when you first open your dialog box here, it's only going to be looking for MasterCAM files, so you're going to have to go into the filter and change that to all files so you can see the SolidWorks stuff. The week 3 plain stock weldment is the stock piece that I'm going to be working with, so I'm going to go ahead and open that piece up. You may see a box called SolidWorks configuration. I did not use configuration. It's just everything is on this default level here. So if I click OK on this twice, what's going to happen is now my part comes in. So I'll just keep hitting that till it goes away. I'm going to do all my movements and rotations and stuff outside of this command. So I'm going to hit OK for now and just let that sit there as a base. So as in previous videos, one of the first things you want to do is set up your levels for your new geometry. So I'm going to come in here and create a level 10, and we're going to call this week 3 bracket stock model. You're going to notice that eventually when I navigate away from this, it's going to update with a couple of extra what do you want to call it, levels in here that are on 0. And this is like a graphical glitch that's happening to me specifically. It shouldn't be happening, but you'll see what happens in a minute. So I'm going to select my MasterCAM solid part that I just brought in for stock, and I'm going to move that to my week 10, or my number 10 level, my week 3 bracket stock. I'm going to move that. You see I have one entity now on that bracket, which is exactly what I want. And while I'm working on it, I'm going to get rid of the other two pieces, the other two levels here that I have, just so it's easier to look at. Now, you'll notice that this part came in at an angle as opposed to the 90 degrees that we rotated the first machine part. So I'm going to do the same thing here real quickly. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to dynamically rotate it 90 degrees into the same plane as machine bracket. Excuse me. Once that's complete, now what I'm going to have to do is think about how I'm going to position this on the part. Because basically what I'm going to do is overlay this onto the as machine bracket, which will allow me to have my stock positioning, and then I'll turn this to stock. So in order to do that, what we need to do is pick a position that makes sense to to use the from and to commands in order to use the existing snap points and just make it easier on ourselves. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to choose a spot that I'm not machining that I know is kind of static. So I should be able to use the midpoints of the tops of these as snap points. So let's give that a try. I'm going to go to translate. I'm going to select my stock model. I'm going to use from and to. And let's see what I can grab here. So here's the intersection point on the top of my bracket. You'll see the X in the middle of that O snap signal, which is letting me know I'm in the center of that line. And what I'm going to do now is come up here and get the same snap point on my finished stock piece right here. So it's showing me a preview. Okay, we're going to move it instead of copy. Okay. Again, by default, copy is selected, so you always want to make sure you change that when you're just moving things. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of different parts overlapping, and that's no good. So what I'm going to do now is click OK. And it's going to look a little sloppy at first because we haven't actually turned this into a stock model yet. What I want to point out to you right now is that you can notice we have the 1/8 of an inch of material here on the bottom. And again, that's because we picked a snap point that made that easy. You don't have to do any moves, after the fact. So now that we have this geometry in position, we have our level created. What we can do now, very simply, is navigate back to the toolpaths command. And once you have a machine selected, for me, I'm going to choose default. Once you have a machine selected, you're able to go into the properties mill default area and click on stock setup. And very simply, we're going to change the shape to solid. Keep in mind you want the right stock plane. This is good for what we're doing right now. But if your stock plane was different than what was shown here, you got to go in here and select it. So I'm going to move the shape to solid. I'm going to use the cursor selection button to come over and grab the solid piece of stock. And after that, I'm going to click display. so I can actually see the wireframe or the solid version of it. I'm going to say I want to see the solid stock for now, not the wireframe. I'm going to click OK. And what we just basically did is converted that solid. I'll convert is a bad word. You're not actually consuming this at all. You're basically creating the stock based off the geometry that exists. So really, when I turn this off, you'll see that the stock model actually is still there. It's just shaded. And if you go into the View tab, you can change the shading based off of whether you want to see it at all or not. But simply put, that's how you do solid stock. It's a really easy way to bring in something from a Solidworks or from a solid CAD drawing file and dropping it in place here. It's my preferred method to do, even with the square stocks and the round stocks now, because it's just so much easier to just position it in space and then to go ahead and just click the solid after you're done. So that's basically the tutorial for this. I may provide a machining tutorial based off of this setup later on in a future video, but for now this basically covers all of the issues involving bringing in a solid piece of stock and merging it. Hopefully you find this useful, and I will see you again in a future video. Thank you.